So after Trinity and the presentation I gave there, a lot of questions came up, and unfortunately the time didn't allow us to answer all of them or discuss them all in the panel. So we wanted to take the possibility to quickly answer all these questions that came up because there was obviously a lot of interest. What we've seen at Frankfurt Airport, which I find very interesting, is that the products that sell very well are not necessarily the products that are the highest sellers in the duty-free stores, like perfume and cosmetics and alcohol, etc. But they're actually products that are good for gifting, sometimes very high value products, very expensive, exclusive items that people only come across because they found them on Google or via search engines in China, Baidu. And then they realize, oh, Frankfurt Airport is actually selling this Leica camera case set for 49,000 euros. I can't get it anywhere else, so I can get it through the Frankfurt Airport. Other examples are high-end caviars, high-end wines, things that make for good gifting. All of these kind of things sell exceptionally well. And the classical duty-free items sell actually less than those special items, which proves the point that the airports, together with their retailers, should work on augmenting and increasing their product portfolio to be more unique, more sense of place. One of the top sellers in Frankfurt is actually German sausages, because this is something that a lot of tourists want to take home to China or to Vietnam or to Korea as a present or as a memory of their trip to Germany. What we've seen so far, and that's the great news for everyone, is there has been no cannibalizing of revenues. In fact, what I mentioned earlier, it actually adds both digital and physical revenues through this web rooming effect. People are simply engaged more and know more about what is possible to buy at the airport, what is available, and so the sales are increasing on both sides. There's no cannibalization at all. The fact that 71% on average are now planned purchases doesn't necessarily mean they are all buying online. This simply means that they plan what to buy before actually traveling. So this can still mean that they come to the stores and already know this is the product, where is it, I just need to find it efficiently. And of course, e-commerce can make that process easier, and it can make it unnecessary to go to the store. But we are not proposing to replace stores altogether. We're simply proposing to make that experience of planning and the convenience aspects of shopping at an airport significantly more powerful. A lot of people got hung up on the fact how little of the revenue in the stores is actually coming from upsells through the service staff. And of course, these statistics were based on mindset research. They were actually done in two customer groups. The number that I used, the 2%, is actually in a higher spending customer group with a relatively high average spend of I think it was around 5,000, 6,000 euros a month. In the lower or in the overall spender group, that number is actually 7%, but still these numbers are of course reflective of not being exactly at the level where you consider this the biggest driver of sales. The way that we are looking at it is that we think that of course sales staff is always necessary, and highly trained sales staff is even more necessary, and also multilingual sales staff is extremely important, because this is what I also mentioned in the talk, is one of the biggest barriers for people coming from Asia, coming from countries where they don't necessarily speak the language of the airport that they're traveling to. And of course, online can assist with that significantly, with that fear and that barrier of not being able to communicate in the language that you're most familiar with. Of course, airports or airport retailers don't just hire students. I was being provocative on purpose for obvious reasons. Of course, retailers are investing millions every year on training their sales staff, and there are also airports where there are very, very high percentages of sales figures. The point is not to diss the way that sales are being done through the sales staff. The point is that to explain that engagement now happens on very different levels. So of course there are always the people that will prefer to go to sales staff and to get consulting and so on if that is available. But there is a very, very large group now also looking for other means of exploring and finding out information. So one of the big challenges, and that's what retailers always reflect to us as well, is that the setup of minimum annual guarantees and the high margin pressure at the airport gives them very little flexibility to be innovative. And we can sympathize with that to some extent, of course. What we do think, though, is that it is necessary to create innovative solutions, and they tend to be easier and cheaper to do digitally than to do them physically. So trying out new products and new services and new ideas on an online platform in collaboration with the airport that the retailers are present at actually creates some very interesting opportunities. And at least the airports that we are working with at the moment are very open to these ideas of also sharing a margin, of creating promotions in the interest of driving overall engagement and overall sales. So the question of marketplaces is, of course, a very big one. Is an airport a big enough marketplace to survive in the long run? And I think the answer is twofold. For an airport that has a lot of frequent travelers, that has a very strong home base, like airports in big capital cities, there is absolutely the possibility to become a marketplace for about a third or even half of your overall yearly passengers, because those are the passengers that are constantly flying through your airport and that have the interest in actually using your services, like fast track, like delivery, like shopping, like parking, and so on. When it comes to pure transit airports, of course the question is, do people really use those services if they're simply transiting through this airport? And the answer is that it is a question of how the airport creates that value proposition. And for example, Changi Airport in Singapore is a very large transit airport, and they have done a great job at actually driving digital conversion. They have just announced that they are even launching their own e-commerce startup that is a bit more independent from the airport. So they're doing a lot of things in this direction, and other airports are, of course, doing similar initiatives. So, but in the future, we believe that the airports need to think about themselves as marketplaces for products and services that are independent of their own channels. The idea is basically that if I am traveling with an airline through 2 or 3 different airports, then the airline could be providing the services at each of the airports and the products and the things that I want to buy at these airports through their channels, through their apps, through their website, because all of what we're doing is fully API based. So in the long run, it will not matter whether you buy your duty free while you're doing a Google Maps search how to get to the airport, or while you're booking a flight through booking.com, or while you are on Alibaba, because we are trying to create an ecosystem where everything can be connected with each other. E-commerce has massive potential in travel retail. If you're looking at how many perceptive passengers are using the channels, the apps of airports and airlines, we are talking about billions of customers every year. And we are only tapping a minuscule portion of those customers in a meaningful digital way. And if you look at how a company like Alibaba or Amazon sold more from one year to the next than the whole travel retail industry sells in the entire year, that shows us what kind of growth potential is still there. Of course, stock management is something that is to be considered, and this is also what I was mentioning in the keynote, that doing a very large and powerful digital engagement with the customers gives you the potential to be independent also of the stock that you're having in the stores at the airport. To give you an example, if you are an airport in the Nordics, why don't you sell skiing equipment to your passengers? You don't need to keep that at the airport. You can do that through a digital marketplace, and then you can fulfill it from a warehouse. Most airports have warehouse spaces that are vacant at the moment. Hopefully not all of them, but they can directly deliver this. Another option is products that retailers typically don't carry at the airport because maybe the volume is too low. Then you can partner with dropship companies that will directly dropship these products to the customers. In the end, the question is simply how much traffic can you generate on your platforms, and how can you convert that in the most efficient way by providing them things that they need at that destination, that they need on their journey, or that they are generally interested in at that point in their journey. Privacy is always a big concern, of course, not only for the customers, but also from a legal point of view. One of the reasons why Frankfurt Airport had to do the joint venture with Heinemann in Frankfurt was because of the very strict data protection laws in Germany. Many other countries, especially in the EU, are adopting similarly strict regulations now. So the necessity to create a real customer relationship through something like a loyalty system is actually a requirement for sharing data within the partners. Other than that, you cannot simply hand out personalized data to another passenger. Also, there's a lot of naive thinking in the industry that, hey, we have the booking code from the ticket. Can't we just use all of this information? No, we can't. A lot of this data protection is very strict, and it is our job in a digital way to ask people to give us that data and allow us to use it. We cannot just crawl it or try to collect it through the systems that might have it already, but we're not allowed to do that. "34% of all passengers decide to buy something at the airport before actually getting to the airport." And the reason why reserve and collect of duty-free retailers is not working very well in most airports. There are some that are doing it quite successfully, including in Incheon, for example. The reason is that very often the retailers have done these offerings under their own brand. And this is something that the average passenger can simply not relate to. If I wasn't in this industry, I wouldn't know who the travel retailers are. I wouldn't know that I have to go to Heinemann.com for this airport and that I have to go to worldofdutyfree.com for this other airport. So the whole point is that the brand is not the retailer, and offering all of these services or a retailer-focused loyalty system is something that can only attract a very small portion of the passengers, whereas the airports or the airlines are much bigger brands, have much bigger customer perception of their brand, and actually use their digital channels on a daily basis already anyway. It is always one thing to build a very powerful platform and something that customers can really use, and it is a completely different thing how to get customers to use it, how to market it appropriately, how to collect customers from all the channels necessary, and so on. Frankfurt decided not to put a lot of marketing into marketing the platform in the beginning while we're still rolling out features and functionalities. So the marketing initiatives have been there, but they have not been on a massive scale. But they are increasing over time, and the penetration to the customers will also increase over time. But there is definitely always more, also what I mentioned a bit earlier, about how to drive conversion and how to improve that, where you can do real magic. Because converting 1% more of the passengers coming to your website, when you have 50 million visitors to your website, that makes for a very large portion of sales. So there were questions about the commercial impact of the project in Frankfurt, and of course we are still at a very early stage. Frankfurt is a public company, so they report their figures only in their general reports. However, what we're seeing right now is that there is an impact both on the digital side and of course on the retail side. With this 14% actual web rooming effect, we've seen an increase in retail sales that were in a double-digit million area. Of course, one of the things that we are realizing also is that the most crucial aspect to creating higher transactions is actually conversion. And this is something where Frankfurt Airport is currently working a lot also with their internal teams on getting more customers into the store, because this is one of the most crucial aspects. For example, if you have most people using the website to look for flights, you need to make it very easy for people to, from that flight search page, to get into the store. If the store is hidden on the website, you don't get the traffic that you need. There are some very great examples where this is working very well. For example, Heathrow or iShop Shanghai have done some very, very good conversion optimizations, and they have managed to grow their traffic significantly, and Frankfurt is in the same process at the moment. What we've seen so far, and that's the great news for everyone, is there has been no cannibalizing of revenues. In fact, what I mentioned earlier, it actually adds both digital and physical revenues through this web rooming effect. People are simply engaged more and know more about what is possible to buy at the airport, what is available, and so the sales are increasing on both sides. There's no cannibalization at all.